Philophobia is the first major game from Tim Ruswick of Game Dev Underground fame. And he was kind of giving me a press key for his title after trying it out in kind of the itch.io version several months ago. And this is being played with the official Steam release. And what we have here is a very interesting take on platformer design with kind of a bend towards the hardcore side. And while I don't think it fully works 100%, it does do a few things interesting that we don't normally see from the genre. So the story is that we are in, I guess, love's hell. After our heart being broken, we are now left to struggle in the four realms of the various, I guess, love hell. I guess that's what we'll call it here. Only armed with our broken half of our heart. Now, you may think that a game that centers on the fear of love and overcoming it may have to do with adventure or visual novel elements. Instead, we are trapped in a challenging platformer world, with the game split between four distinct regions. Each region will change both the color of the background as well as changing what kind of mechanics and elements you're going to face. Now, at the start here, your main movement is going to be just in the form of running and jumping, but you'll eventually unlock the ability to do a dash, throw your heart like a boomerang, and also deal with various interactables in the levels themselves. Now, the main thing is that you only take one hit, and if you touch any kind of hazard or enemy reaches you, it's back to the start of the level, with each level being one screen long. Now, the other thing from a unique aesthetic perspective that you probably have noticed is how the game makes use of raycasting to essentially give you a vision cone around your character. You can only see elements that are basically within the character's own frame of field or field of view. Anything else becomes blackened or you can't see it. And this is updated in real time, as you can see my character moving around there. This becomes not only a major part of exploring the levels, as you're going to be caught by things that you can't see until you've already kind of crossed over the vision threshold, but also in terms of gauging jumps. Because as you're moving around and jumping, the kind of raycasting or the elements of the platforms themselves will shift based on the character's relation or perspective to them. And this becomes a very major point when the game starts introducing some very light puzzle elements where you need to explore a level in order to find the necessary switch or path to go. In terms of collectibles, there's two kinds, with exception to the key that opens up the door to the next level. You'll find kind of yellow hearts or pieces of hearts always hidden in areas that are a little bit out of reach or hard to get to. And some levels will contain wayward souls that you can find. With that said, though, there does not seem to be any reward for collecting them, which we'll come back to later on in this video. But the general format is enter a level, find the key, get to the door, and move on to the next. And one thing that I do have to give Tim credit for is that the level diversity itself is really nice. Every level has its own unique set of hazards and kind of challenging the player in a different way of getting around. And it never felt like the levels themselves were repeating content or just repeating the same thing again and again. And when I spoke with Tim about this, he had ideas for more levels for the game, but he felt like he couldn't make them unique enough to justify their inclusion. Some of my favorite levels in Philophobia, and I apologize if I'm butchering that title as well, came at the various boss fights, with each fight requiring you to do something different to either get around their attacks or be able to land a hit against them. And there are four bosses, including a final kind of Metroid escape the destroying area kind of level. And like I said, at a basic standpoint, the core gameplay loop of the title works. Your character feels good to control. There's some very interesting aspects of movement tech when you combine the dashing. I'm not sure if this is a bug or intended, but if you dash into kind of the corner of a platform, it will cause your character to bounce up, allowing you to kind of get a little extra height and clear areas you normally wouldn't do. And there's already been interest in kind of speed running this game and making use of more tech to get around it. And with that said, I do have a few issues with the game that none of them are really related to the mechanics or the core gameplay loop, but kind of I think more on the overall presentation of the game. And we're going to talk about that next, but first a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. You can tell that Tim put a lot into Philophobia, and this was a very personal game for him. And as we've said, at the core gameplay loop level, there's a lot to like about the mechanics. But I do have a few issues, I guess, in terms of the overall package of the game. The first one has to do with the raycasting itself. When I spoke with Tim about this, he knew that it was going to cause some trouble, but he ultimately left it in as he felt it was a major part of the game. And having played through the entire title, unfortunately, I had to give it a thumbs down in terms of an element for the game. The problem is that it adds an unnecessary amount of difficulty to the precision platforming that the game demands. All the elements of the title are built on fixed cycles, meaning that every time you start the level itself will behave the same way every time without fail. And with the kind of darkness that is displayed here, it runs into a problem of both intentionally and unintentionally hiding crucial elements for the player, which can lead to very easy deaths. As you probably have seen by now, when you're jumping from like one platform or one floor to the next, you can't see what is coming. And this can be used to affect in terms of hiding pits, but it can also, in many cases, hide projectiles or enemies who are moving around, and you won't be able to see them coming until you've already crossed over and they kill you. This happened a lot in the game's fourth area that introduces these kinds of enemies that move very slowly around floors and ceilings. And it wouldn't be so bad if this wasn't such a precision and technical focused platformer. If we were doing kind of more of the pacing and kind of the leeway of a Mario game, the raycasting, the quote-unquote fog of war, wouldn't be so bad. But when you're asking the player to make very precise jumps, especially when you start combining the air dash tech with dodging enemies and avoiding patterns, not being able to see the entire level becomes a detriment as opposed to adding charm to it. Now, another thing is that I kind of felt the front half of the game was better than the back half. Each of the game's first three areas introduce some kind of movement tech or ability that is then made use of in that area. Area 4, I feel, doesn't really do a lot in terms of adding more mechanics. Outside of new enemies and the webbing, it's not really changing the player's way of moving through it. And the final, or the penultimate boss fight is very frustrating, being a set pattern fight that feels like it goes on, I think, a little too long, in my opinion. With that said, the only other issue that I have is that we did ran into some bugs while we were playing the game. Some of the patterns weren't going off as they should have. Sometimes the character would not behave. And we also ran into an issue with the dash not properly refreshing after use. And this also added some difficulty, and I don't know if that last one was intentional or not. Another thing that I do want to emphasize for people watching is that this is definitely on the harder side in terms of platforming. And if you're expecting, again, a game that tells a story about getting over being crushed and finding the will to go on to be on the easy side, no, this can be very punishing in terms of its difficulty. And that may put off newer players to it. But I know Tim said that he aimed this from the start to be on the challenging side. The one presentation base issue that I have is that I wish the collectibles had more meaning in terms of unlocks or giving you something for finding them. It just seemed like they were there just to add a little bit of a hardcore edge, similar to the strawberries in Celeste. But I think it would have been interesting to maybe tie them to unlocking concept art or other elements of the game, as Tim has been on record about being very personal about the development of it, and it would be interesting to kind of see the growth of it and have the collectibles be more tied to the gameplay or the game experience. With all that said, despite my misgivings about the game, ultimately it's still a very solid platformer, thanks to the technical side and kind of the balancing and refinement Tim did to make sure that the jumping and movement were on point. And if you're hoping or looking for a good platformer like that, then definitely give this one a check. The issues I have are definitely more on kind of the nitpicky side and don't affect the overall quality of it. And I would like to thank Tim for giving me a press key. I hope I wasn't too rough on this game. I hope I didn't break his heart with this review. But if you're an indie developer working on your own game and would like me to take a look at it, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. If you want to hear more from Tim, you can check out his channel, Game Dev Underground. We've done several podcasts together, and he has been a guest on our Game Dev Roundtable cast as well. But once again, thank you for watching this video. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Philophobia, and I will see you all next time. Take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.